So I've got lots of representations of how everything all fits together. And this is another attempt at providing a representation of how everything fits together. So you've got genotype, you've got phenotype. Genotype gives rise to phenotype. Phenotype interacts with environments. And then you have feedbacks, where you have environment can impact phenotype, phenotypes can impact genotypes, environments can impact genotypes directly, particularly by causing mutations in genotypes. So a means by which you have environments impacting on phenotypes, the phenotype of an organism can respond physiologically to the environment. So for example, you get cold, and suddenly you shiver and you have goosebumps and you go like this and maybe even curl up into the fetal position and put a blanket on. These, in fact, are physiological as well as behavioral responses to a change in the environment. So that's the environment impacting on phenotype. It's actually lowering your body temperature, and your body responds by trying to raise it back up again. Phenotype can impact on genotype in interesting ways, such as the manipulation of the DNA found in our immune system cells. It's a very interesting story where the way our immune system works, to a large extent, has, at least in terms of adaptive, what's known as adaptive immunity, involves this rearrangement of genes so that you're actually generating new genotypes inside of our immune system cells. How do you study these things? Well, genotype is these days studied directly by sequencing, and traditionally studied by Mendelian genetics. I have it under the phenotype column because Mendelian genetics is very much a phenotype-based science. Also, there's something called genetic mapping, which is looking at linkage relationships between genes, how close together genes are. Again, based very much on phenotype and Mendelian genetics type experiments. There's a lot of other things that you can put under these various headings. Once you know the sequence, you can start comparing the sequence of DNA between different organisms to see how similar they are. Genomics is looking at the entire genome of an organism in terms of its sequence and trying to understand the organism from that perspective. You have many ways that you can analyze the genetics of traits. You can do something called reverse genetics, where you actually go into an organism and change its DNA to figure out how that's going to modify phenotype. It gives you a sense of how the genotype is connected to phenotype and how phenotypes work. Under the heading of environment, ecology is the study of the interaction between organisms and their environment, something we'll get to. Population genetics is a study of the interaction of the genes of organisms at population levels, particularly with environments, how allele frequencies, how different types of genes change in their frequency within populations. Epidemiology is actually figuring out what causes various diseases and things like that. Can be very much a interaction between understanding of the impact of environments on the genetics of organisms. So there's lots of things that go on. And at the basis of a lot of these things is good old Mendelian genetics, which is something that Mendel came up with 150 years ago.